I'll call the meeting to order. If you can stand with me and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Roll call. Councilmember Crowder?
Here.
Councilmember Culleton?
Here.
Councilmember Lassonde?
Here.
Vice Mayor Tryon? Here. And Mayor Boland?
Here. Council consideration. Consider adopting resolution number 2023-40. Thank you for putting that in there. A resolution of the Town of Council and Town of Paradise awarding contract number 8407.1 CON, whatever that is, off-system roadway rehabilitation. I'll stop there and let you take it.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Boland. Good morning, Council. Thank you for your time today, scheduling a special council meeting for 3 pressing items. As mentioned by the Mayor, the first item before you is awarding a paving contract for our off-system road rehabilitation project. This is our first off-system road rehabilitation project since the 2018 Camp Fire, and this project comes through federal funding through FEMA in public assistance. We have received all required approvals to advertise bids a few months ago and had advertised the project as quickly as possible. And the reason why we're getting this before you in a special meeting is in an attempt to schedule and phase the project to achieve as much to be complete in advance of the winter season.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
Yeah.
Okay.
We want to do this one.
You want to do that really quick? Okay, one quick technical. Okay, great. With that, we have, I'll just pause for a moment.
Yeah, you're gonna wait till you're on the mic.
Talking to the microphone.
Yeah.
We're just making sure that those watching online can see what is being presented. Okay, thank you. All right, so with that, there's information about the history of this project in your agenda packet, but in short, we advertised for bids and received 3 bids on August 9th. The engineer's estimate for the total project, the scope of this first phase is shown on the map, and I'll get into the colors here in a moment. The engineer's estimate was about $6.7 million. We received 3 bids, with the low bidder being Hat Creek Construction and Materials Incorporated at $5,756,809, and the other 2 bids ranged between $6.2 million and $6.7 million. Per the contract specifications, the award of the contract will be to the lowest responsive bidder based upon the base bid, while complying with all of the requirements prescribed. Staff is recommending awarding the contract to the low bidder, Hat Creek Construction, in the amount of their bid. This recommendation is made after careful review of the contractor's bid submittals, including required DBE, disadvantaged business enterprise commitments, good faith efforts, and subcontractor listings. The financial impact of the project is outlined in the agenda packet due to funding that we've secured through FEMA public assistance and combined CDBG DR funding for our local match portion. There will be no net impact to the Town of Paradise. And the, well, I'm sorry, I do have that. Yeah. Okay, so just making sure I had that correctly there, but with our CDBG DR funds, it does fulfill our local match requirement, which is great. So with that, available to answer any questions. Before I do that though, I will mention I have the project scope here up on the project location map on the screen. The light blue color, which includes Honey Run, Circlewood area, and a couple of roads downtown, will be done before the end of this year, with the second phase of the project resuming after the winter for next year. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions the council might have.
Real quick, Hat Creek, have you used them before?
No, this is the first time that we've used Hat Creek. They just missed on a project with Butte County a couple of days ago, but we're excited. Their submittals have been great. Looking forward to working with them and going through this project first time.
So you're comfortable with everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, based on the bid submittals and all of the requirements that we have as a part of the bid process, we are fully recommending to proceed.
Questions?
And I'm just confirming that our match is with the CDBG DR, correct?
It is correct.
And so that is where our match funding is coming from on this?
That is correct. So on the table breakdown, funding for the project comes from FEMA Cal OES, 93.75, and our local match. It says local match, but it really is funded through our CDBG-DR allocation of the 200 million. A portion of that 200 million is going to our off-system road rehabilitation match.
Perfect, thank you.
Mark, is any of these roads that you got on here this year or next year going to be delayed because of the PID or any other undergrounding that has to be done?
No, the schedule that you're seeing here is a direct result of our coordination and sequencing of delivering the project with everything considered. So again, blue will be done by the end of this year, pink early next year.
Mark, on your pink ones, will that be done in concurrence with those that you're scheduling for next year as well? In other words, are we going to have two different things going on at the same time?
Well, our plan is to bid the next phase of the on-system road rehabilitation project this fall, and so we're working to schedule that to really pick up right after this one is done.
Okay, so
to answer your question, it would be sequenced afterwards.
And you'll have enough time to complete them before the winter rainy season?
For next year?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Second question is, not knowing where Hat Creek is, I mean, I know where Knife River runs their trucks out of. Where's Hat Creek coming from?
Bernie, yeah. Bernie, thank you.
So we're going to have a bit of a distance between that. Are they going to stage somewhere closer? I mean, you know, we've got a lot of work to get done.
Yeah, I don't have information on their staging plan, but we've seen contractors come from out of the area many times, Yuba City, Sacramento, Redding, that are able to come in, do the job, do it right, and have the least impact to the town. So we'll continue, that's part of our process once the contract's awarded, and working with them to make sure.
I just know we extended the date by 1 year to do all the roads because of all the conflicts of scheduling and all that. I'd hate for this, because we picked a company up in Bernie, to have that delay things of next year, because you just told me that the second half is going to be done after this is completed, and if they take too long, that'll push that into the subsequent year and push everything out.
Well, I will say that the start of next season's project is not dependent upon this being complete, but that's the kind of tentative schedule. Next year's project can start independent.
Okay.
So with that, and then our recommendation award has to be based on the requirements of the bid package and the federal funding that comes with that. And we are fully confident with, in-town, out-of-town contractors coming in doing the work as long as they comply with the requirements.
Okay. As long as this doesn't impact the start date of next year, then I'm okay with that.
Correct.
Hey, Mark, when you, on system roads things, right, that's like Neal Road, our main road, because that's kind of what I'm looking at, like some of these roads, they're not the roads that people drive every day that are all tore up, Is that the difference, that the on-system roads are like Neal and Elliott and, our main arterials?
That's correct, and those are funded primarily through Federal Highways Administration and administered by Caltrans. Those are federal aid eligible roads, and non-federal aid eligible roads, as odd as it sounds, is eligible for federal aid through FEMA. And there are off-system roads, our local roads, our neighborhood roads.
And those are later on?
Well, no, these are happening now. These are off-system roads in front of us.
But those are in 24, 25, 26?
So I can pull up the paving map, albeit it's out of date. We were just talking about updating
No, that's
here.
okay.
But
I wanted to get...
we're trying to deliver both concurrently as quickly as we can. And we're doing it in sequence behind the undergrounding of utilities, behind service lateral work by PID. And so as they're ready, we're pulling them in and trying to get these done with forecasting what's to come ahead in the next couple of years.
Okay, do we have any cards?
I have no cards on this.
Anybody wish to speak to this? Seeing nobody, we'll bring it back. What's the wish of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Tryon, seconded by Lassonde. Roll call vote. Councilmember Crowder?
Aye.
Councilmember Colleton? Councilmember Lassonde?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tryon?
Aye.
And Mayor Boland?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. 2B, consider authorizing the town manager to execute the necessary documents to order and purchase a Type 3 Pierce International BX3 fire engine before September 1st, 2023.
All right, thank you, Mayor Bowen. This item is a joint presentation between myself as Public Works Director, Town Engineer, and Overfleet, and our Battalion Chief, Rick Manson. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, and staff. We are seeking approval for the purchase of a new Type 3 fire engine, and this will be the replacement for engine 382. So if we could go to the next slide. So the requested amount for the purchase of this fire engine is going to be $660,000. The received proposal from Golden State Apparatus is $630,459.80. There's roughly a 34 to 37 month build time, which is why we're coming to you now, because we had anticipated we're going to need another one, and with the build times that we're seeing, we need to act. The expected completion of this fire engine will be September of 2026, roughly. Historically, we saw fire engine build times of about 12 to 16 months-ish, but it's only gotten worse. So the last engine that we purchased was engine 82, and that had a 24 to 26 month build time. And in a matter of a year, we're looking at another year on top of that. So we don't see them getting any better anytime soon, but that's what we're faced with. Here's the proposal that came from Golden State. You'll see that there is the purchase price of the fire engine there, the base price, taxes, California tire fee, and there is a consortium membership that we are part of, discount included in there as well. So the replacement of engine 382 provides a cost savings of $7,811.99. That is the consortium membership that we have that will provide that discount for us. The purchase agreement before September 1st will also provide a discount to us as well. So fire engine manufacturers have gotten wise to inflation, and what we're seeing is that they, beginning September 1st with this manufacturer and manufacturers just like them, is that they said we are no longer going to just add a 3% cost escalator per year for the purchase. It'll be true actual costs when that fire engine shows up. So we're seeing it all over, due to the effects of supply chain issues. But purchasing now before September 1st could save us roughly $30,000. So the balance of the cost savings with the original ask price of $660,000 will allow us to buy loose items of $29,540.20, such as exhaust fans, new rescue equipment. Some of that stuff will transfer from the previous fire engine over to the new one, but some of it has a life expectancy with it, ropes and things like that. So there is some loose item purchase in there as well. So our current fire engine inventory is two frontline type fire engines, which are kind of the municipal ones you guys see run around town for the majority of it. That's engines 81 and 82. We have a type 1 reserve, which is 281. We have two type 3s, 381 and 382. And then we have the battalion chief vehicle, which is the 2020 Ford F-250, two utility vehicles we just received, and those are both 2023 Ford F-250s as well. So historically, we talked a little bit about this in the past, but we see an 18 to 20 year life cycle for a fire engine. Once you start to get past that 20 years is when we start to see increased costs for maintenance and repairs. They start to stack up. By nature, the fire engine leads a rough life because it's running emergencies all the time. We keep them plugged in, we keep block heaters on them, but they get a call for an emergency, they get out there and they start that thing up and they leave. A long over-road truck driver will have that fire or their diesel engine warm up for 15, 20 minutes before they leave. We don't have that luxury, so they lead a rough life. So with the purchase of our next Type 1 fire engine, that will put us kind of on pace for looking at a replacement for a Type 1 fire engine sometime around year 2035. And then with the purchase of a new Type 3 fire engine, that'll put us on pace for about 2040, somewhere, and that'll give us that roughly 20-year life cycle. Is there any questions
So the one that we're retiring, is there any place that takes those, or do we have any?
So we can, once that new fire engine shows up, we can look at the possibility of sending it to auction. But again, we'll have to look at that when it shows up. And the fire engine that we have now is, that we're looking to replace, is a 2001 model. It has served the community very well for a long period of time. That's one of the engines that we use to rent to the state when strike teams are out of the county, and it generates quite a bit of income that comes back and feeds our equipment replacement fund.
Yeah, that's been good for us. So they don't take those trucks and rehab them and sell them?
No, that is an option, but we don't have the intent on keeping a reserve Type 3 fire engine.
Okay.
We just don't want to build it. We don't see it necessary to have a fleet of that magnitude.
Okay, very good.
So,
Questions?
So are we doing the same thing with this one that we do with the one on order? We're paying for it in full now?
well, that is,
Yeah, so I did want to add information about the financial impact about the project or about the procurement. Again, the budget request is $660,000. Staff is recommending the use of $330,000 in fiscal years of 2024, 2025, and 2025, 2026 to cover the cost of the procurement through Measure V. With that, again, it's a temporary sales tax for police, fire, roads, animal control services, and other needs. And so that would be the goal to forecast rather than trying to ask for the money out of the budget that we just adopted, is to allocate this procurement in future Measure V expenditures for next fiscal year and the year afterwards. There is an eligible discount that's not shown in this proposal. I believe it was to the tune of 3 to 3%, 5%, 3 to 5%. That is an option and still remains an option, but we require full payment of the $660,000 or $630,000, well, a reduced amount from the $630,000 now with the placement of the purchase order. And so based on the factors of our budget being adopted, and staff is recommending that we allocate this towards Measure V for and split into 2 fiscal years, being that it has a 3.5 year, potentially more than 3-year build time.
And don't we also have grant money that was available to us?
So we have been successful in other grants through USDA for community facilities, such as was that also a Type 3, our most recent Type 381?
Yeah.
We are in line and planning to continue to put equipment forward, but USDA's availability for equipment purchases is reduced this year, as a lot of federal programs are. But we are in line and can put this forward for future grant funds to help offset the costs, and it could be as much as 60%. But at this time, with what we know about the conditions of those grant programs, the staff recommendation is based on it would be great to get additional funds, but we don't know the answer to that, and we wouldn't know the answer to that for quite some time to assume full payment through Measure V, with the intent that staff's going to continue to try and secure additional grant funds as these programs become more available.
Okay, so the grant funding that we had was used on the prior fire
Correct.
engine?
Yes,
So
and
we do
other
not
equipment.
have, the question is, we do not have current grant funding available for this fire engine?
We do not.
Okay. And do we think that the Measure V money will cover this?
Yes, the annual revenue for Measure V is trending about between $1.1, $1.3 million per year, with other scheduled expenditures. And so what this would do would reduce, there's options, there's even a reserve as well. It would reduce the amount available for other allocations out of the Measure V expenditure plan in those 2 fiscal years by $330,000 per year. And so there would have to be other decisions made on how to balance Measure V budget with this expenditure planned.
And have you talked to the Measure V committee about this?
So this has not gone before the Measure V committee. And again, the committee is, the sole purpose of the committee is to, as an oversight, to ensure that expenditures being placed and being approved by council are in compliance with the voter-approved initiative. And so with that council decision, we would inform the committee at the next meeting that this decision was made, if it were to be made, and they would be able to concur or not concur on whether or not it was consistent with the measure.
Thank you.
Since it's Measure B, just to help educate me, that means it does not impact our fiscal sustainability model, is that correct?
Well,
Okay,
Measure
what-
V is completely included in the overall fiscal, it's a big
Oh,
picture.
okay.
It's not a fiscal sustainability model just based on the general fund. It should include all funding, revenues, and expenditures of the entire town of Paradise. With this said, what we're asking is approval to use $330,000 of planned and budgeted revenue in that model for 2 fiscal years out of that specific fund.
So had we planned this in our long-term budget, or do we not look at a 5 or 10-year budget and say, okay, we're going to place these big ticket items in those budgets? Did this just pop up, or was this something we've talked about before I came on the council?
No, it's something that we've talked about as staff as well, and communicating with the council on goals and fleet replacement programs. We said, again, kind of, you see the overall picture of the fleet and the goals of this department, and the goal to provide fire protection services and have it be uniform through the Pierce engine. So these are things we've been forecasting. What has really pressed the issue ahead of why we weren't having this discussion with the budget literally, a month and a half ago, is the change in approach in build times and the change in approach in the way the contract is structured, where it would put us at a much longer lead time as well as a higher cost and have more risk placed on the purchaser.
Well, one thing that's a little alarming with the contracts and fire engine build times and the prices increases that we're seeing is that we don't know where it's going to end. You know, as an example, the last fire engine we purchased was the Type 3 that was purchased through some grant funds, and that was roughly, I don't know, $430,000. So we're looking at about a $200,000 increase since 2020, the beginning of 2020. So
if this were to get done sooner, I mean, something happens and all of a sudden they're done in 2 years, are we financially going to have an issue with that?
My reply on that would be is the Measure V fund, if your question is, if it arrives in 2 years instead of 3, and maybe
Yeah, if they say in
only
2
one
years
fiscal
it's
year.
ready.
Yeah, there is a reserve in the Measure V fund that could potentially be drawn upon, or we could ask council for other direction.
Okay.
But there is a healthy, I believe, a whole annual year, $1.3 million of reserve that is not allocated for a Measure
Right,
V.
and that is something I wanted to say, is we do have that reserve. Plus, Measure V, to me, has always been one of those that we're not, if we have a need, we need to use it. It's something that, it needs to be used right away, and I like the reserve, but this, I see this as a need. So anyway, other questions?
Yeah, so Measure B, we also satisfy the labor contract with CAL FIRE, which goes up almost every year. So whatever additional, sometimes I think recently it was a couple $300,000 in the last one. So I'm just saying, I mean, I'm all for, you know, I like that idea. I don't want to take it out of our money that we have invested or any of that stuff, you know. So the question was, when we sign this contract, if Jim signs that before September 1st, we don't have to put any money up?
well,
That's correct.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
there's no
that's
deposit.
correct.
Okay.
And it kind of locks it in, so we're not going to be
Right.
subject to the
Right,
escalator
no,
that they're going
no,
to put in
I got
there.
that part of it. The other question I had was on that other slide where you showed this balance of the cost savings will allow loose items to be replaced. I don't, I guess, you know, fire hoses, I know when they get burnt or they wear out, you know, but like the jaws of life, some of that stuff, that's a part rescue. I mean, what about the hand tools? I mean, the shovel, if the shovel ain't broke on the current fire engine,
Sure.
why don't we just put it on the new one?
Great.
Or any of that other stuff? I mean,
Great question. So some of that stuff will transfer over. We will transfer anything that's feasible and serviceable, we will transfer over. The problem is there's so many changes that take place. Some of those things have life expectancies. For example, an exhaust fan that we use to ventilate a structure get smoke out of it, you know, they have a battery and they have a serviceable life. Fire hose has a serviceable life. It's tested. And it only lasts for so long. It has
Right.
synthetic materials, but a lot of rubber materials in it as well. So there's a lot of that stuff, and then there's technology changes that come along with that, and that's part of purchasing a fire engine on service intervals for efficiency, better serviceability and lighter weight, anything that we can do to save work comp injuries for our employees, things like that, it all plays a part of that.
Well, I guess it's like every year they come out with a new iPhone, and I'm always tempted to go, let me buy the latest one with the newest. But, like when I think of vehicle extraction equipment, like those things they break the window with. Some of that stuff is like, the technology hasn't really changed. Those are the kinds of questions I have.
Sure.
And being somebody that's not too sure about life expectancy by according to somebody, some think tank or whatever, gee, the thing's still good, but according to some data, some study, it's not supposed to be good. And it just gives me reason to pause.
Sure. And that as an example, the NFPA guideline for 18 to 20 years for the serviceability of a fire engine, it's based on a lot of things. Not that we just need to replace it, but equipment as it progresses becomes more efficient, fuel efficient, for example, serviceability, things like that. Technology goes a long ways, and we've seen that in the recent years. So those all play a part into that. And I would like to think that we're good stewards of the taxpayers' money for the town. And I know that's not in question, but we are good stewards, and we will reuse. And that 29,540.20 is not a dead set that we are looking to spend.
And I
We
realize
just want to replace the items that we need to
Yeah, I realize
replace.
the serviceability from
Sure.
all those, it could affect our insurance rating, it could affect a lot of things.
Absolutely.
I get that. So I just, the way my brain works, kind of sometimes I question it. When we send this engine we're replacing, that's one we send out on a state call, right, where we do mutual aid and we go to some big fire somewhere.
Yep.
Is the price we charge them, does that factor in our eventual someday replacement costs? And if not, it sure should.
So the state looks at those contract prices, and they're always evaluated. So every year, there's a new agreement that comes out for price increases, fuel, for example, that all increases. So there's all those things built into there. And they're always evaluated. So every year, we set a new agreement.
Okay, any cards?
I have no questions.
Anybody wish to speak to this? Seeing none, what's the wish of the council?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second?
Motion by Crowder, seconded by Colleton. Roll call vote, Councilmember Crowder.
Aye.
Councilmember Colleton.
Aye.
Councilmember Lassonde.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tryon. Aye. And Mayor Boland.
Aye.
Thank you.
2C, consider signing letter of support to the County of Maui Mayor and council members, and give direction to staff on further support efforts of the County of Maui and other organizations. I think this is Colette.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the time to speak to this very important item. So my apologies, I'm trying to zoom in here on this letter. Thank you. Just trade technology help here. Thank you. Okay. Okay, well, we'll start here. So as, of course, we all are acutely aware, there are some devastating fires that have happened in Maui, in the state of Hawaii, that have striking similarities to the Camp Fire. I know I can speak for myself and that it is very difficult to watch this news coverage. I'm sure it's very difficult for all of you here in this room as well. And our hearts absolutely go out to every single resident, visitor, and employee working there in Maui on these fires. In watching what has happened, and already the background information in your staff report is out of date, because as we know, in these types of disasters, these are very fast moving, things change very rapidly, and unfortunately these fires now have become the deadliest in about a century in this nation's history, surpassing the Camp Fire at this point, and that number is still terribly rising. So today I wanted to present this information regarding formal letters to send to the government officials in Maui There are 2 letters in your packet. One is to the mayor of Maui. I have that here on the screen. The other is to the council members of the county of Maui. They have an interesting governmental structure there with both an office of the mayor and a 7-person council. So we did want to address both. The letters are the same. And this is really expressing your feelings of solidarity with them and offering our assistance. So I've presented this to you as a draft today. Of course, if there are any changes or edits that you would like to see as a group, we would be happy to make those. And then we would just ask, once you are happy with that, to sign that as a group, that we may share that with the County of Maui. So before we go on to the rest of that, do we want to take some time to go through if there are any changes? We can make those now as we're discussing that.
Anybody see anything you want to change? Okay, looks like we're okay with that.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. So we will have you sign this after the meeting. So the next part of that, as I'm sure you all as council members have been receiving calls and requests for help and information from County of Maui officials. Staff also has been receiving those requests, and we wanted to get council direction to assist and provide the support that those staff people are requesting of us, and also to reach out proactively with some of the information that we have. As you know, many of our staff here went through the campfire. We learned a lot, we made a lot of mistakes, and we had a lot of successes. We feel that it is our responsibility to share that with other communities who have gone through something as terrible as this, especially with Maui. There are so many similarities. We feel that there is a lot that we could share in these days right now that could be very helpful to them. They are now moving into, as you know, the days of kind of that medium to longer term response, and then they will be moving into recovery. And so while there is a lot of help that they are receiving from FEMA and from their state emergency management organization and other organizations, we have some very unique knowledge and experience that we can share with them. So we just ask for council direction on staff putting time towards assisting staff and other organizations who are assisting in the County of Maui. And then also wanted to address, many questions have arisen about donations and how we can help. One of the things that we learned during the campfire is the coordination of donations is very complicated and sensitive. There are many difficult issues involved in that. So staff's recommendation is to support other organizations who do that as their core mission, and not to be involved directly in collecting or sending donations, because there are many organizations who do that already. We are happy to support and to publicize those vetted organizations who are doing that work. But it is staff's recommendation that that is not something that the town of Paradise would be directly involved in. And so that is the information that I wanted to share with you today. If there are any questions or additional direction, I'm happy to answer those questions.
So I would just, if the council's good with it, I would just ask that under my name, you put my phone number. And if anyone else wants to do it, that's fine, but I just want them to be able to call and reach out. I've already talked to one that reached out. I don't know how I got my number, but that's fine. I told him, you got it now, please call me back if you have any questions. I mean, they're asking questions like, how long before you got in front of the public and started talking about stuff? I mean, how long before you started discussing rebuild and recovery? They're in that raw stage right now of, they're just lost. And so we all know what that is. We know what that's like. We can talk to them talk them through that and help them out and give them some suggestions. They're in a whole different situation. I mean, being on the island out where they're at, I mean, I can't imagine the circumstances and the situations they're in. But anyway, if the council's okay with that for me to put my number on there, I'd appreciate that. And I do agree with you on the donation thing. I've talked to several organizations that they were grateful for all the help. You never want to act like you're not grateful, but they ended up with a lot of stuff, and they didn't have a place to put the stuff. And being where they're at, and the island and stuff, they need money, and they need to be able to buy what they need. And I think that's the best way to go, but that's just my personal opinion.
And I'd like to say, maybe include all that are willing council people to have their numbers on there so they can reach out. Saturday, Cal OES called me and asked that if I would be willing to speak with people about our experiences. As of Saturday, they were on Oahu. They were not on Maui yet. They're apparently already getting scammers in there that are representing that, you know, they've been through fires, and Cal OES is trying to, minimize that as much as they can. I think they're very fortunate to have Cal OES there, because unfortunately, Cal OES has a lot of experience with fires from here. So I think that's really good for Hawaii to have them there, and I think we need to do all that we can.
I agree with you on collecting the money. I think the other part about these donations is what's the mechanism for getting them to the people who need them. And I think part of our experience was, not everybody got access to the money that was available. So I think that'll be a key part of it. I talked to their economic director back there briefly, and you can tell they're just sort of in that same sort of first initial panic mode that we were all in. And so I think this is great. I'm more than willing to put my number down. Mayor Bolin is, of course, the spokesman for the town, and he should be the initial contact, but I do think anything that we can do to help them would be great. So.
You can put my number on there, but I'll probably say all the wrong things. That was meant as a joke. The only thing in your request here that I have an issue with, and not, let me rephrase that, it's not that I have an issue with it, but it makes me ask the question, where you are saying, offering assistance from the Paradise staff to local Maui staff, whether informal or formal requests, in person or virtually. In today's technology that we learned from the pandemic, Zoom and all the other technological ways of communicating are pretty good. And it talks later on about the financial impact, that if we were to send staff members there, that there would be a general fund hit. My heart goes out to these people, but we're rebuilding our community. And all of you that are working here on our town staff for our citizens your job is to rebuild this community. I have no problem with you being available and using staff time to communicate with these people, but I don't know that I could afford, to have my public works director fly to Maui to give them advice when he could. It's a concern or question based on the recommendation.
Certainly, and I want to address that. That is included here. It's meant to include any type of request that is asked of us, and that is why it's included here, to get council direction on that, because that may be a request that is made, and we want to be able to respond to that correctly.
Well, and I guess that's what I'm saying. I mean, like, based on what you're asking there, that's the one piece of this. I don't mind our numbers, our staff's numbers being made available to anybody, especially the officials, that would be asking the question. But can I do without you, my economic developer, for a week? But, whether I can afford it or not, every dollar we have and all of the staff time we have is really committed and dedicated to rebuilding after our Holocaust, and they have, and we have complete empathy for them. We'll help in any way I can, but we, I don't want to, I just would be concerned about that and the impact it would have on us. So you'd have to show me that, yeah, we could cover that,
Understood.
I know there are organizations that are actually paying for people to go over there and for a day or two just to help out and give them some guidance. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I did reach out to the Corporation Counsel, the attorney for Maui County, to let them know our firm would do any work for them free of charge, pro bono. We have several attorneys who frequent Maui with their family members, and I have not heard back, and so I wanted to just let anybody know, if you hear from anybody, if they need legal help, we'll help free of charge. Several of them would use frequent flyer miles to go over there and help free of charge, because again, it wouldn't cost them anything to use frequent flyer miles. But I haven't heard anything back, and I don't want to keep inundating with emails. So if any of you do hear of some need there, please pass them our way. We'd be happy to do that free of charge.
Thank you.
Well, based on what you said, Greg, if there are, because part of my thing is spending any money out of our general fund. I mean, but, so if if we had a staff member that they were gonna fly over there for a day or two to help out, to lend their expertise and everything, I would not be opposed to that, but
Okay.
where it's
Yeah.
tied to our general fund.
Sure.
And plus, we can't afford to lose what we're doing here.
Understood. I do want to also point out that travel for types of things like this are already included in many departmental budgets, but that is something certainly for council to determine. Also, if there is an official EMA request, that can be reimbursable.
Ron, you had something?
Yeah, just, you can include my number. I'm very familiar with the island since I spent 3 years living over there and flew search and rescue missions off of Maui numerous times, but if they need me, I'm available.
Good, thank you. We have a card.
I have one card from Jamie Johnston.
One card. Basically, you guys covered a lot what I was going to ask. I don't know if you know this, but our most well-known emissary of Paradise, Stephen Murray, is already on the ground there, helping wherever he can. You guys, we all have so much knowledge from what happened to us. We're now seeing that possibly their electrical system could have been the cause of the fire. We were told, weren't we, in emails and, before, I guess the evening before the fire, that PG&E was going to power down the lines and never did. So you think, well, if that had happened, would this fire have started there? They have so many questions, and there's so many things that we have done that can be helpful to them. I don't know what the water table is like there, whether they could underground everything there after this. There's a lot smaller geographical, that they're dealing with, a lot smaller area and acreage. We've had so much more to rebuild, but I would support anybody from the town council going over there and being, with some kind of a, something that they can look at and say, okay, we can try this, or we can consider this, because that's all I've been able to think about for the last, 9 days, just watching this. It's a lot of people here going through this. I'm surprised there's not a whole room full of people here, because this is so close, just with water in the background. So you know Maui. I worked for a company out of Maui in Paia for 12 years. I was a California rep, so I wasn't in Maui, but it's so close. So thank you for anything you can do.
Thank you. And it's difficult because we're willing to help, but they gotta be ready to accept it, We had to come to that point ourselves too. We had people from Santa Rosa and other places that were offering help, and we had to come to that point that we were ready to receive information and help. And that timeline is different for every community, so. You're asking for a vote on this?
We're looking
Yes.
for council guidance, yes.
Okay. All right. Council, what do you want to do? Let's do it.
Move to approve, to go ahead and send the letters.
I'll second.
And that would be with the change of adding, it sounds like everybody's phone numbers too.
Yeah.
We'll just type in the phone numbers, because I have the documents ready for signature
Okay.
now, so we'll add
Okay.
those to it. Motion by Tryon, seconded by Crowder. Roll call vote. Councilmember Crowder?
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Lassonde?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tryon?
Aye.
And Mayor Boland.
And I say aye, and it's with a lot of grief in my heart that we even have to talk about this, but, anyway, we're there for them. All right. Unless there's something else I'm missing, I'm going to adjourn our meeting. Thank you for coming.